Was Labour's Homeless Minister right to resign yesterday? 027 862 2222. Give us a ring. Let us know what you think about this. MP Rushanara Ali was accused of hypocrisy after ending her tenant's contract, then hiking up the rent. Ali was renting an East London townhouse to 4 people for a total of £3,300 a month. In November, she told them she was ending the lease and selling the place, and they had 4 months to leave. But according to the iPaper, the house was back up for rent just a week later, this time at nearly £4,000 a month. Someone close to the MP said the property was only relisted after she couldn't find a buyer for the place. And a spokesman insisted she'd followed the rules, hasn't broken the law. However, Labour's Renters' Rights Bill will soon stop landlords from ending a tenancy to sell a property, then relisting it for a higher rent within 6 months. Ali says she was resigning as Homeless Minister because she didn't want to be a distraction, apparently. Now, Matthew, she didn't break the law as it currently stands, but she's shepherding through this legislation, which, just to repeat, makes it unlawful to say, right, you've got to get out of my house, right, as a renter, £3,000 a month, whatever it is, and then put it back on the market as a rental property and hike up the rent to somebody else. She's shepherding through that legislation. Do you think she was right to resign?
Yes. I think for several reasons. I think you are totally, as you've outlined, open to the charge of hypocrisy and do as I say, not do as I do. I think she's shown a level of incompetence that is not needed for high office. She was previously also, as part of this brief, the building safety minister. She had to have that taken off her because she'd met with a group that was largely potentially responsible for the cladding in Grenfell, and Grenfell survivors were outraged. So she actually has half a brief now, or had half a brief as Homelessness Minister. She's obviously spoken before about how no-fault evictions are a huge cause of homelessness, which is true. I would caveat that with it is largely, in my view, inadvisable for any MP to be a landlord, mostly because you cannot be a competent landlord. You are a full-time MP with very awkward working hours. Therefore, you tend to leave this to a lettings agency, which I think Rushanara Ali did, right. And therefore their job normally is to try and get as much money out of people as possible. The one question for me is, why, when you were offered this brief, did you not weigh up a potential conflict of interest of having 2 or 3 properties? And also, why did you not let the people stay until it was sold? What was the need to give them their notice whilst the process was going on?
I mean, she did offer them that in her defence. She said they could be rolling tenants until the property was sold. But I think the reality is she realised she kind of lowballed the rent. So for £3,300 a month, each tenant was paying 825 quid. Now she increased it by £175 for the new tenants to £1,000 a month, which is not insignificant.
Right, that's just the thing. That's what the Renters' Right Bill is really there for, where you get a landlord. And I don't see there any reason why an MP can't have had a property and rented it out. Esther, you've got a view about this. It's to stop that idea where I'm not really happy about what rent I'm getting in, so I'm going to pretend to sell the place. I'm going to offer you eviction under the law, and then I'm just going to jack it up for somebody else to pay more. That's what the Renters' Rights Bill is trying to stop. Matthew makes a point before we go to our first caller up in Manchester. He says that, frankly, MPs shouldn't be owners.
I don't think that. I mean, as he knows, I have a huge problem with second jobs and MPs doing things that are not directly in the office, but I don't agree with that. That being said, in her defence, and I don't think she should have resigned, she stated she's against unreasonable rent rises. Now, in a place like East London, £1,000 a month is actually pretty standard rent. So she was, in some ways, undercharging. But this move isn't to stop landlords from charging more rent. It's to basically stop the renting housing stock from becoming even more and more limited, because landlords are seeing it easier, basically, to either sell off the property, because sometimes when you have tenants actually refurbishing the property after tenants have been in it, it's quite expensive and unprofitable. Yep. So that's what this move is about. I think the threshold for ministers to resign should be a lot higher than this. I do agree.
You don't think she should have resigned?
I don't think she should have resigned, no.
Look at the optics, though. You're the Homelessness Minister making people potentially homeless.
Look at the optics of this government. I mean, this government has been an optics nightmare from top to bottom. I care more about, and my expectations may be low, a competent politician, more than anything. I don't want to know about your personal life or your private life. Would I prefer them not to be hypocrites? Fine. But the overarching point is build more houses so you don't have to do this, and actually create more
well, just to be clear, just so I could clarify, Rushanara Ali, it was weeks, not a week, after...
Yeah, weeks, exactly.
Right, she sold the property, then put it back on the market.
If they wanted to stay, they would just have to have paid more eventually.
I don't think she's the only politician, is she, in the cabinet with a property, is that right?
Well, Rachel Reeves, apparently she did used to rent her old property because she had to move into number 11 for about £3,200 a month. But again, it's uncomfortable. What if she raises it and she's the Chancellor?
Well, Simon in Manchester, what do you think about this? Do you think she was right to resign yesterday, Simon?
She was, yes, she was right to resign, but she's done nothing wrong. And I don't just mean legally, I mean morally. She's a landlord, I'm a landlord.
Right.
We've been defined by this government and the previous as investors.
Yep.
She's simply maximising her investment. The rent was below market rent, clearly. She's maximising her rent. I don't see the problem with
well,
this.
Simon,
yes,
hang on. You're right insofar as your point of view and the point of view of landlords, maximising investments, precisely what you should be doing as a landlord. But you're not shepherding through legislation to say that is the wrong thing to do. Isn't she a hypocrite, Simon?
She absolutely is. She is an absolute paradox. She is a complete hypocrite.
So why shouldn't she resign?
She should.
Most politicians
No,
are
I do agree. I do agree she should resign. So on one half, yes, she's a total hypocrite and she should resign, which she of course has. But on the flip side, she's absolutely done nothing wrong in her job as a landlord.
Right. There's a number of people that, own properties. It's not millionaires. I mean, Simon, I don't know whether you are, but it's a lot of people that perhaps might have had a property, kept it, moved in with somebody else and rented their property. It's not lots of people who are sort of big business or, slumlords. Lots of people have investment property, perhaps one.
That's most people's source of wealth in this country, by the way. Most people don't have money in the stock market or anything like that. Most people's primary source of wealth is property. And so we can't reasonably say that, no MP should be a landlord or have properties. I mean, if they have some sort of life experience and wealth, it's probably in a property.
Now, Emily, you're in London. What do you make of this? Was she right to resign, Rushanara Ali?
100%, and I'm quite shocked at what Esther said about, she offered them to be rolling tenants. I mean, does Esther realise what that means? I mean, come on, they're not chattels, they're people.
No, I get it.
Moving is extremely stressful anyway, and ultimately, if it was below market rent, then she made an error in the first place. And quite frankly, if she wanted to sell it, bearing in mind what Esther just said about how East London is and everyone wants to live there, basically, why didn't it sell then? And, I don't want to be a distraction in her letter of resignation. You couldn't make it up. She's been splashed over the papers for the last 24 hours. Who on earth drafted that nonsense? Well, I knew, call me Doris Stokes, this would be the lead story on your show today.
Well, I do think she should have spoken to her tenants and said, look, I need to raise the rent because I'm not getting enough profit, instead of putting it on the market and then taking it off and then raising rents, because there are people at the end of the day. But the point I was making is she didn't actually kick them out. That's the technicality I was focusing on.
Well, I think Emily should be advising the Labour Party about how to do their communications, frankly.
Well, that, I think, proves my point. If you are going to be a landlord, you've got to be diligent. Yeah. You do not have the time as a parliamentary Under-Secretary of State. That's the problem.
Well, you've left it to a
tenancy, you've left it to a lettings agency who have put it on for under market rent. I actually think, I don't know if that is the case. I think she tried to sell it. If you can't sell a house in this climate, you're clearly selling it for over the market odds. Therefore, you couldn't do that in 4 months.
25 grand, I think.
Well, no, so you've ended up going, I'll tell you what, we need to make the money back.
Well, but thanks, Emily. She makes a very important point, Emily, when she called. Look, these are not just, chattel. These are like people who are living in that property. Now, after the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether MP Rushanara Ali has been accused of hypocrisy by the Tories after ending her tenant's contract, then hiking up the rent and relisting the property. 0207 862 2222. That's the number you need. And go first of all to West Yorkshire and to you, Raymond. Was she right to resign?
No.
Why not?
Well, she was doing a job as a homeless minister, and as a private citizen, she's a landlord. So she was looking out for her interests in her private life, and it didn't really affect the job as a homeless
But is it not, don't do as I say, do as I do, or the other way around? I mean, don't do as I do as I say. I mean, it's rank hypocrisy, isn't it, to be bringing through legislation which says this should be unlawful, i.e. evicting a tenant, and then weeks later, or for whatever reason, in her case it's because she couldn't sell the property, putting it back on the market for rental and then raising the rent. She's taking the legislation through Parliament to make that illegal, and she's done exactly the same thing. Now, it's not illegal yet, and she hasn't broken the law as it currently stands, but she's trying to change the law. I mean, you know, I hear what you say about her being a private landlord, but do you not think that ministers should, frankly, walk the walk and talk the talk?
They should, but as soon as they get into government, everybody there, I'm sure they've all got a second sideline hustle. She might have thought she won't be getting caught, or, you know.
Right. Well, she certainly didn't think she was going to get caught, and she said that she resigned because not she'd broken any laws or anything of that kind, but because she didn't want to be a distraction. So
this
obviously,
is why MPs shouldn't have second jobs.
Well, more about that in a second. She wrote to Sir Keir Starmer. Just have a look after her letter what Sir Keir Starmer's response to her resignation was. You see, it's up on your tellies there, but he thanked her for her work, which he called diligent, and praised her work again for the repeal of the Vagrancy Act. He wrote, "I know you will continue to support the government from the backbenches and represent the best interests of your constituents in Bethnal Green and Stepney." A rather positive response there, don't you think, Matt? Instead of saying, look, I accept your resignation, one line, or I don't want my ministers, frankly, to even appear like they're being hypocritical.
I think they're tricky letters sometimes to write, both the resignation and the response. I think this one, you know, shows that Rushanara Ali has always been a sort of Starmer loyalist. She's always done as she's told. I think her and Keir get on quite well. You compare that to sort of Louise Haig's resignation response, where it was a sort of couple of lines and like, yeah, thanks very much, see you later, where there wasn't necessarily a getting on and factional differences. Whether she'll come back one day, I don't know. I just think rank incompetence on different levels of her brief, really.
Rank incompetence. Shelley, you're in Newcastle upon Tyne. You know, we've just heard Matthew say, look, even if it's not hypocrisy, which, to be fair to Matthew, he says it is, it's also just rank incompetence, and therefore she had to go. Do you agree with him, Shelley?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got 2 points, actually, because she says she's never even apologised in her letter, and she says, I've done nothing wrong. Well, neither have thousands of landlords that's used no fault evictions, yet they've been criticised a lot. So,
are you a landlord, Shelley?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
The second point I've got is I'd love to know if she claims expenses as an MP. When, I mean, is this the only house she's got? How much extra money is she earning? And is she claiming expenses as an MP, which I think would be totally wrong as well?
Well, no doubt we will find out. There are two
I think she has a
important
few other
points.
properties.
Sorry?
She has a few other properties, one of which she owns with a family member, and I'm not sure about the expenses.
Well, we don't know. I suspect there's more to this story that may or may not come out. Shelley, but you ask, obviously, a very important question there. Shelley's not a landlord, but nevertheless, come to you in a second, Victoria in Norfolk, brace yourself. We're told that look, this is really being criticised, this legislation, by landlords who say this is going to affect our incomes and in our capacity to maximise the rents that we want and we're legally entitled to. Meanwhile, she's benefited from it.
Yes, I think it's the least defensible ministerial position I've ever seen.
Right. Why'd you say that, Peter?
Because she should never have been put in charge of the homelessness with a property portfolio. It's like putting Dracula in charge of a blood bank.
Thanks for calling, Peter. I mean, I couldn't put that more pithily myself, whether I agree with it or not. You certainly sell your point well. Bill, you're in Essex. You know, what do you make of this? I mean, most people are saying, of course, she should have gone. You know, it comes to politicians. Ultimately, you know, you can't be a rule maker and a rule breaker. What do you think about that?
Yeah, she's in a funny position. I think at the end of the day, she needed to resign. Your caller before put it jokingly, correctly to a certain extent, but she was right to resign because she's just going to get a load of flack from everybody day after day after day. As an ordinary landlord, I don't think she was probably doing wrong unless someone has said to her, you're not getting what next door are getting. They're getting £700 more per month than you are. You should put your rent up. I think if she really, really wanted to sell the property, she would still have it up for sale, to be honest. I don't think the estate agent would say to her, you can get £700 or more or sell the property, because then they lose their percentage if she puts it up for sale.
Bill, you make that point really well. It's been made in this room before you called in, which to say if she really wanted to sell it, she could have done. Instead, the management or somebody, one assumes but one doesn't know, allegedly could have gone to her and said, here's the thing, can't sell the property for maximise amount of profit, but you could put the rent up, and that appears to be what she has accepted. Bill in Essex, thanks. That's a very forensic call there. Matt, listen, Matthew, you're involved in this. You know, we heard that caller before talking about being evicted with no rent arrears. You know, just help us understand, you know, you've been very clear that Rushanara should have gone, but why there is such an impact on people when it comes to no-fault evictions?
I think because a bit like the workers' rights stuff Labour have done, there's a bit of an imbalance. That's what it feels like. And I think the no-fault eviction things, it costs us all by the way that people end up homeless and stuff like that. So I think it's attacking an imbalance that already exists between landlord and tenant and tries to make it a little bit fairer.
Well, thank you for all of your calls on this. Later, we'll be asking whether we should stop making jokes about small men.